transition now into the UFC 316 betting breakdown presented by mybookie.ag. You know the drill. MyBookie, you bet, you win, they pay. Let's go ahead and go through. We're just going to go through the top 4 fights. We don't have to go through this whole card. But I do want to start with the guy you just mentioned, Patchy Mix, making his UFC debut against Mario Bautista, taking it on, I guess, somewhat short notice, although maybe he kind of had an idea he was going to be in this spot. Luke, we'll start with you. Patchy Mix minus 190, Mario Bautista plus 145. Give me your thoughts on that matchup.
The guy who won the Bellator Bantamweight Grand Prix has a claim to being that guy, which is, of course, Patchy Mix. But, I mean, the coming out of that win over Raufeon Stots, I watched that whole tournament. I mean, beating Kyoji Horiguchi and all the way to Magomedov. Just he was housing these guys. And then he just blows the doors off of Raufeon Stots, who's a very good fighter. That guy, if he can show up again, he can be champion in this organization. There's no doubt in my mind. But the issue he ran into was in the rematch with Magomedov. He looked a little lost out there. He couldn't quite get a whole lot going. He seemed hittable on the feet. He had trouble getting to the back. You mentioned the fights on short notice. In a sense, that is certainly true. They are putting it on short notice. But he's been begging for a fight and training all this time. Like, in another way, it's not short notice at all. I will say this. Bautista didn't make any friends with the Aldo fight and some other ones before that. He doesn't have a style that is necessarily fan-friendly. I actually think he's a little bit tougher than people are realizing. That minus 190 to me is understandable. But, again, if the guy who came through, the backpacker who came through the door after beating Raufeon Stots is there, Bautista's going to have a long or maybe just a short night. But otherwise, it could be quite competitive. Patchy Mix, I think, has a little bit of something to prove after that last Magomedov performance and, of course, all the time off.
Yeah.
Agreed.
What do you think?
Luke,
I know he trains at XC.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the gym. He's been training. He's been doing everything that he needs to do. And to his testament, during this time of uncertainty, whether he had a fight or not, he was in there helping the other guys get ready. He was helping the Dan Iges, the Kai Kamakas, the Jeremy Kennedys. By doing so, I think it keeps you fresh and in your mind in the game, right? Mm-hmm. So when that phone does ring, it's not a short notice. It should never be. Not at this level, right? You should be like, it's the fucking Dan Ige mentality. I get a phone call, I can jump out of a goddamn
massage.
I'm ready to go fight.
Yeah.
But in that situation, this is that opportunity that you were clamoring for, right? You didn't have a position in the PFL. We didn't know what they were going to do with the promotion. The phone rings and you're able to answer the phone and be on weight and be ready to go. I'm with you guys. I look at this fight to where one small mistake in Patchy can get you out of there. But not only can he get you out of there, he's so good at his transitional submission game, but he makes the right choices where he doesn't rush into scrambles. He lets that position expire, and then when you move, then he's a step ahead of you into the next position of dominance until you make a mistake. And then when that mistake happens, then he takes your neck.
Yeah.
But the things that I do notice, and I'm not cornering him, but this is something I've talked to him about, is he does have problems with movers on the feet, guys that will match his stance. He's so accustomed to being a southpaw and always trying to win the lead foot battle. A lot of times what we'll do is with Kai Kamaka and guys, we'll just match his stance and go into southpaw. And I think it kind of confuses him sometimes. So I think the analysis that Luke is saying is very true on the feet, and Tiger did the same exact thing. Tiger match stance, went to southpaw, and you saw Patchy have a lot of problems on the feet with that. So what adjustments can he make? We'll see, but I think Patchy gets him down, and once Patchy has you on the ground, the fucking round's over or you're getting submitted.
Yeah. If he wins this fight, you throw him right in the top 5?
Well, no.
Like, what happens?
I do, but I don't think you leapfrog Sandhagen. I don't think you leapfrog Jan. I think there's some guys there. I think he's 2 fights away. Now, could you put him in a situation like what happened with Kai Ascara where he came in right away and fought? I think the 135-pound division is too deep. I think Patchy does need to come in and get a win or 2. But depending on the way that he wins this fight, you might make an argument to be able to put him in next against Merab because of the backstory. I've seen those rounds, right? Again, they're in the gym, and we all know that, but I've seen the way those rounds go. Let's just leave it like that.
Yeah. That would be interesting. I also think like him and Figgy as a next fight, like that'd be a good.
Oh, that's a good.
That'd be a good
too.
step up. Okay, cool. So we got Patchy and Bautista out the way. Next fight rescheduled. Joe Pyfer who apparently thinks you can only get food poisoning in Mexico, minus 420 against Kelvin Gastelum, coming back at plus 295. I feel like that's a big line for Pyfer. I mean, he's solid, but anyway, Luke, again, we'll start with you. Pyfer minus 420, Gastelum plus 295.
Yeah, as a betting consideration, that's a decent value on Gastelum. Vastly more experienced against the very, very top of this division. Good chin, decent wrestler. There's ways in which he could create some difficulty for Pyfer. But the thing that I come back to is Pyfer is a very good athlete, heavy-handed. Now, there's been questions about his cardio and the way in which he manages resources, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe this will be a chance for him to right some of those wrongs, to lean into a little bit more of a measured game such that he needs one. But the biggest issue for me is not so much any of those X's and O's, although they obviously are quite relevant. It's the fact that it's at 185. I just don't think Gastelum is well suited for 85. I know he can win at 85. I know he has won at 85. But I think that, that window is largely closed. Pyfer is a natural middleweight. As I mentioned, a physical, heavy-handed one at that. I think Pyfer is going to have to make some meaningful adjustments to the way in which he apportions and sets up his offense in order to make this a done deal. But I think if he does those things, there's really not much of a question in my mind about what happens.
I agree.
So outside chance for Gastelum, certainly, but this should be Pyfer's fight to lose.
Agreed.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
same thing.
And you got to think too, like what Kelvin's last loss was to Sean Brady. Same camp, different styles, different fighters. Do you rinse and repeat? No, it's a different game plan because you have two different fighters. But it is nice when as a coach some of the tendencies you might see from Kelvin, and it's very similar. This is a guy that's probably hasn't adapted or changed a whole lot in his career. A lot of times, to me, it's him fighting the scale rather than getting better and changing to new resources and doing new things. I'm with Luke. I think this is kind of one-way traffic for me, and I think Pyfer will do a good job. When we fought him when Chris fought him, southpaw versus southpaw, a lot of our attacks were to attack the body, and that led us to the head. And arguably, it was a very close fight, but I think Pyfer can do the same thing. And taking some of the steam, the air out of the tires of Gastelum, if you will, and attack the body to lead up to the head.
Yeah. KG, I get so frustrated with him because I think he's one of the biggest, I don't want to say wasted talent because that sounds so incredibly harsh, but because he's had a great career, but I thought he could have been really, really good.
Sure.
And he was really good despite being – what seems to be pretty lazy and undisciplined.
That's what it feels like, right? It's just like mismanagement when it comes to the off season. Like you can't get yourself that far out of weight.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, Luke. Like this guy's a welterweight. He's a welterweight body if you ever stood next to him. But when you see what is he doing in the off season, to me, that's just incredibly disrespectful to your own career, right?
Yeah. Just a career that was, he's a little lazy, a little undisciplined. It seems like to me, anyway. All right, co-main event, Eric's favorite, Julianna Pena.
I love her.
Wait, what's the story there? I don't know the story.
I love her. She's just.
He said he would love for her to put her heel through his ball sack at one point.
Did I say that?
I think that's.
I don't know.
I think that's kind of.
I just feel like she would just do you dirty, steal your wallet, and leave you in a fucking bathtub full of ice with your kidney gone. I don't know. I love her.
Yeah, she's interesting. Julianna Pena plus 440, Kayla Harrison minus 700.
Oh wow.
Which I think everyone probably kind of agrees with that line. Eric, we'll start with you on this one. Give us your thoughts kind of on that.
It's a tale of two fights. It's the first two rounds and that weight cut for Kayla. I don't think that it's 135. She doesn't look healthy making the weight.
Yeah.
But if Kayla can get her out of there early, rounds 1 and rounds 2, it should be one-way traffic. But what I think scares me if you're betting this fight is Julianna Pena's tough as shit, and if she can, what she did against Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, she'll take 7 or 8 just to give one.
I
mean, she really will.
And Juliana can grapple.
Yeah.
If this can get into later rounds, deeper rounds, then of course you favor Juliana. But to me, I think this is Kayla getting her down and trying to get her out of there early as possible. But the cardio element to me is the question mark, the weight cut, and how does Kayla look if it goes into rounds 4 or 5.
Luke?
Yeah, I mean, that weight cut, she was competing in the high 170s in judo. I mean, what are we doing? Like, she's having to do 2-a-days every day and then road work 6 days a week just for the weight.
Fuck.
All while eating pine nuts.
Brother. That is she's taken years off of her athletic life doing that.
Definitely.
I mean, there's just you don't do that walk away the same. That's the first thing I want to say. So I think that probably won't be a decisive factor in the end, but anyway, for me, I mean, Harrison should win this, right? So her best part of her offensive game is her ground and pound. That is where, to me, she excels. She is not the same kind of submission threat like with the Jujigatami, the armbar that Ronda Rousey was, for a lot of different reasons. She doesn't have she's not as quick. And there's times when you could see, like in the Ketlin Vieira fight, Ketlin would be in turtle and then would be on her back and then kind of turtle, and then rather than taking the back, there was times she would take the back, but there'd be a couple times where she would bail from it rather than going for like an arm bar where she could have, where you could say like, Ronda would have easily gone for it. And of course, there's judokas all have different styles, but I'm just pointing out that like her best part of her game is not necessarily submissions. I think it's ground and pound, and it can be from a variety of positions. But so it really is a function of getting there. And if you go back to the Amanda Nunes fight, she got her down 6 times out of 8 attempts with doubles and like a trap dump and, sort of fairly standard things that you would imagine that Kayla could do. I think the things that I would look it out for is, to the point you guys raised, like Juliana she'll elbows out, but she'll blitz on you. And dude, like, if you don't, I'm telling you, man, it's kind of funny. I've been actually going to like a lot of regional MMA the last few months. And one thing that you realize about MMA, it's obviously the better you get the fighters, the better they get, the less this is true. But like blitzing on someone who is either novice or unprepared is a very effective strategy. You'll see guys 1-0 versus 2-1, and someone will just blitz the other one. They just cannot handle the pressure, and they get hit. And so she kind of thrives on that a little bit.
Well, to your point, Luke, that was our game plan when Taylor Gordado fought her, and I said, fucking run across the goddamn cage and send one right down the pipe. You're absolutely right.
This is she. That's the other part too. Like Kayla is. If you ever seen her in person, bro, she is. She's such an athlete, but she's not like a quick twitch kind of athlete, and so she can be hit. She's there to be hit. She has that lead kind of cut kick from her stance. So the lead inside leg kick is kind of the one she prefers. That's a decent setup, but. I noticed in that fight, Ketlin Vieira would respond with like a 2 or 3 punch combination to it, and a lot of times it would land. Dude, Juliana like thrives off of that kind of thing. So I tend to think that this is definitely Harrison's fight to lose, but the recklessness and the vigor, quite literally, that Pena fights with could make it a little bit dicey.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, UFC would love Kayla to win. That Amanda Kayla fight is kind of hanging out there.
Yeah,
I would love to see that. I think Amanda would be. I think it'd be similar to Cyborg, where she would just be entirely too quick for Kayla, and her lateral movement would be too much. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Everyone expecting one-way traffic on Saturday for Harrison and Pena, and then the main event, the rematch. This is the we desperately need a star in MMA rematch clause that Sean O'Malley got. Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili 2. Merab minus 290. Sean plus 220. This is about what their odds were in the first fight, except flipped.
Right.
I think Sean was like around minus 260 or something. But yeah, Merab minus 290. Sean plus 220. Give us your thoughts, Eric.
What adjustments do you make, right? And if you're Sean and you're that camp, what adjustments do you make stylistically? I think that once he got the feel of, hey, this guy's not going to submit me on the ground, why not give your backup? Why not bail on more urgency to stand up, right? I think he played a little bit too much off of his back. I think when he got on his feet, I don't think he moved his lead leg enough in and out of stances to try to confuse Merab, which I think you need to do. I think you need to make some confusion there. and I think be more confident in trying to be a sharpshooter from the outside.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be a tale of two fights, owning the center of the cage, and then also what are you doing when you get into the red zones? How are you exiting? How are you getting your back off the cage? And a lot of things that we'll do is we'll drop step into a new stance to try to allow an over commitment, and then you can sharpshoot if you're a guy like Sean O'Malley. So, what are you doing now in the range of frames? What are you doing in the range of how you negating level change? What are you doing when there is a connection? How are you disconnecting the hands, right? I think all these things are step-by-step scenarios that I feel that Tim Welch and these guys are going to be better in this fight for. With that being said, man, I do think I give Sean a better chance in this fight knowing what he knows now.
Yeah. Luke, what do you think? Sean have a chance? Better chance?
I definitely think he's got a better chance. I mean, typically when you see changes in MMA rematches, it's when, and like in terms of who wins the first and the second, is when a sufficient amount of time has expired between them. You know, typically 2 years, something like that, which is not what we're getting. So I understand why the odds are the way they are. I went back and I watched this fight last week, and I have to tell you, man, like, I have so many thoughts about what is required to beat a guy like Merab. And I don't know if O'Malley has it, but well, I mean, he does, obviously. But I'm saying he wanted to make it about having injuries, particularly around his labrum in his hip, and then some of the lighting and the way that worked in the octagon that night. And I can believe that it played at least some kind of role in either way. But like the things that we've learned about Merab is, number one, I'm just going to say this matter of factly, he has the best cardio I've ever seen of an MMA athlete, period. Any weight class, any era, any organization, I've never seen one who's got better than that. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Second of all, in the Umar Nurmagomedov fight, another thing that we learned, we kind of knew before, but his takedown defense is lights out good, like very, very good. And so one thing I noticed in this fight with O'Malley, and, you know, whether or not they'll correct for it, I don't know, is, and this is just Merab more generally, Merab spends an inordinate amount of time operating with a ton of space to move because people don't want to crowd him, right? They are worried about being crowded or crowding him and then being taken down from being overly aggressive with their positioning. And they're obviously worried about the shot. And so what ends up happening is he lowers their offensive volume. He lowers their offensive capacity. He just reduces it by virtue of essentially their nervousness. And I was thinking about this, like one thing you asked me previously about, like, oh, what's, like, you know, some of these changes, the next wave. I actually feel like no one's really talked about this. I really believe that what you saw Corey Sandhagen do with this 50-50 series against Davison Figueiredo could be something that's very valuable. We mentioned it just a minute ago, Coach, about Charles Oliveira just has offense everywhere. Like, he just doesn't matter to him. He's like, whatever you want to do, he's got. You know, I think if you spend a lot of time worried about how are you going to defend Merab's shot, you've already kind of lost a little bit. You're going to wait around for it.
Sure.
You're going to change the way you throw strikes. It's better to wait for it. I mean, better. Okay. An interesting way to think about it is to accept the pressure and then know you might get taken down. But then now the best way to win any kind of scramble or sequence is to be the one who initiates it.
Sure.
Rather than trying to build height. And I'm going to try and, all the slow, methodical shit where it takes a long time, and he can just hang on you. And then when you get up, he's just going to take you right back down because it just overwhelm you with volume. But instead, meeting him with a kind of, inversion, a 50-50 leg entanglement series or whatever one they want to pick, accepting pressure, and then trying to omoplata him to stand. Or I noticed he keeps both knees down in half guard, giggler sweep. You saw the knee lever. You saw Jack Della Maddalena use it against Bilal to great effect. Like, rather than just worried about his offense, greet him meet him at the point of contact with your own offense, accept that there's going to be a takedown, and then learn to have offense in those positions or to reset them with different forms of leg entanglement. That is a lot of things that I don't know if Sean O'Malley can or will do. But it's been on my mind for about a week now.
Luke, that's an amazing observation, because it's what I see Patchy do to negate a lot of what Merab does, right? Exactly everything you just said. When you're saying this, I'm watching the round between Patchy and Merab, right? And that, again, it's a stylistic thing, but it's something that somebody like Sean should look to incorporate into his game. That's a great point.
A lot of free game on this breakdown. All right, yeah. I mean, that's going to be such an interesting fight. I think Merab kind of does the same thing. Maybe not 5-0, but but
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, I will say this. Everybody loves Merab for good reason, me included. Big fan of Ray Longo. I'm a Ray Longo guy. You can count me in on that. I will say, though, if you guys recall the first fight, it was weird. Do you guys remember you had Tim Welch getting yelled at by Herb?
Yeah.
You had O'Malley holding the glove in one case on an armbar. You know, I mean, there was all this weirdness that was going back and forth. And one other part of that was, this is my opinion, everyone's got a different way of looking at it. In my opinion, if you're in a control position with no threat of advancement and you're throwing busy shots to maintain it, you are stalling. So in my opinion, and everyone's going to disagree because they say, oh, Merab does a lot. And of course he does. But there are key moments he will bleed a clock and stall. And so who the referee is here could play a very important role.
Great point.